Hello, everyone. So today we have a fun little thought experiment I've been wanting to do for a while. It seems to be like the way that Transformers works. I see people assigning beast modes to G1 characters a little bit more frequently than I used to. There was an artist that was actually like prominent for doing this to the point where a third-party company ripped it off to make a sideswipe that turned into a bull, just like in his artwork. Not really cool to steal his concepts like that, but nevertheless, I think it's a cool concept. But we've already done that a little bit with Beast Wars, turning them into Cybertronian vehicles for a BotCon set that I still think is one of the most genius BotCon sets of all time. So, what about like extending that idea? So, I am going to sit here with some particular Beast Wars characters, and I'm going to just show you what I think their Earth alt mode should be, what suits them the best. We're not going to go through the entire cast because I don't want this video to take forever, and there are some that are just a little bit hard to pin down. Like I'm not sure what I do for a wolf that also has wings, because there's very few vehicles that fly and roll on the ground and are also like actual workable vehicles. So in this case, we're just going to go through the ones that I thought up and the ones that I think were the most fun to come up with. And we're going to skip the obvious ones. Cheetor's a sports car. Figures, right? Uh, Tigatron would be the same sports car but beefier, right? Okay, obvious stuff. What about Rhinox here? So he's got to be big. Whatever he is, got to be a big vehicle, and it's got to be armored. So we're already thinking military vehicle. But I don't necessarily want it to be an armed military vehicle because a rhino is defensive, but it is not inherently like a carnivore or a predator of any kind. So I don't want it to be something that is like particularly aggressive. So, an APC is about where we're going. So a big armored truck. And this is just, the kind of like security truck you would see. This isn't like, something you would typically see like a military usage, more like transporting extremely expensive stuff, bank truck, that kind of thing. So I'm kind of in that ballpark with Rhinox. Not something that's like aggressive or offensive, but something that's just like super durable and super tanky without actually being a tank. So just so you know what you're in for. That's kind of the logic that I'm working with here. Feel free to agree or disagree in the comments below. This is just me just having a little bit of fun with this concept. So, with that example out of the way, we can get right into the leaders. I hate to be just like bluntly obvious when it comes to picking these vehicle modes. So when I look at Megatrons immediately bring tanks to mind. And considering this one has a forward-facing blaster that literally formed from the front of his alternate mode, it's kind of hard to ignore that element. So he's got to be some kind of rolling weapon. But a T-Rex is a far more nimble thing than a tank. So it's got to be something that's particularly a little bit more maneuverable than your standard Caterpillar tank. So in that sense, we have chosen this wheeled tank, which I think works a little bit better, makes him a little bit more interesting. And it's not quite your standard tank Megatron, but I think it works. I think it works. It kind of gets across the idea that it's a little bit more nimble, it's a little bit more maneuverable. I'm not a tank expert, so I don't even know if this is more maneuverable than like a standard tank that can like pivot with its treads, but I'm trying. I'm trying to be a little bit different here. That's what you're going to find is that even like the alt modes that I've picked, even the ones that are kind of obvious to do, I'm trying to pick stuff that's a little bit less typical. I'm trying to be at least a little bit different because it's a Beast Wars cast. They're going to work a little bit differently. We take Optimus Primal, for instance. Now, of course, we're thinking truck as soon as we think of an Optimus in any capacity, but it can't be a semi-truck. I think that feels like too big for Primal. Like that's actually kind of an element in Beast Wars is that Primal, in his first form especially, was a lot smaller than Megatron. So he should be a smaller vehicle than his opponent here. So I don't want to just make him a pickup truck. So what's the halfway point in between the two? In between like semi-truck and normal truck. And my thought jumped to a mud truck, which is actually like basically a small-ish monster truck. It is a pickup truck that has been modified to do like mud racing. So you get a higher stance, you get larger wheels, and you get something that is more for appropriate verbiage, primal than your standard truck. Seemed to fit for me. So it's a little bit more of a wild beast of a truck, all right? So I think that's somewhere in that realm that primal needs to be in. Let's move on to Rat Trap. This one is tricky because it's got to be a very small vehicle, but I don't want it to be like an uncool vehicle either, you know? So like, do you make him a motorcycle, but like he's sneaky, right? So like a motorcycle is going to be way too loud, right? So I don't want to make it a motorcycle. I don't want to make it some like stupid little like smart car that looks like it could fit in in your mailbox. I didn't want it to be that kind of car either. So what's the happy halfway here? Again, and I settled on a Can-Am Spider. Particularly like if it's an electric model that runs super quiet, that feels like it would be like right in Rat Trap's wheelhouse. Three-wheeled vehicle, very small, one-seater, would take like a hologram pilot, but I think Rat Trap is willing to do that for a disguise. This keeps him on the small side without being like too small to really work in. And you'll notice like when I've come up with hypothetical Transformers in the past, I've used this vehicle before because I really like the look of this vehicle, and I really wish it was a Autobot of some kind. So, it fits kind of that in that like small vehicle motorcycle range, but still feels a little bit more like a little bit more to Rat Trap style, I feel. All right. Next up with Waspenator. If you've watched this channel long enough, you know exactly where I'm going with this. Every time we see Waspenator turned into a vehicle mode, like we did with the BotCon series, it's always a jet. And, that's so easy. He flies, so make him a jet. And in the case of Air Razor and Pterosaur, I would agree. They would be normal jets. I don't agree with Waspinator because he's using insect flight, which is very different from how a bird and a pteranodon would fly. So I feel like it's got to be a different style of propulsion. So we are going a helicopter. If you want an equivalent to how a bug's wings fly, in a mechanical equivalent, I can't think of anything better than a helicopter rotor. Just seems to make sense to me. I've made that argument before. I know the BotCon toy only went with a jet because the head already looked like Waspinator's with the right paint. So that was kind of a skip. But I feel like this feels appropriate. Also, you got that canopy to kind of give you the bug eye lens look too. Like that, like it was, especially because it's segmented. Perfect. This is perfect. Like above all else, if you disagree with the rest of this list, agree with this one. This is what a vehicle Waspinator would look like, right? All right. Moving on. Tarantulas. This is a tricky one too. So the BotCon did two things with Tarantulas. They made him a motorcycle, which is more akin to his Transmetal form. And then when they actually did one based on his Transmetal robot body, it was an APC. I presume because it was a mold that had more than 4 tires. Okay, fine. But I would never say that something that turns into a spider should turn into anything resembling a tank. That just feels inappropriate. Like, if I could step on a spider and the spider just like looks at me and goes, "What was that for?" Okay, then he can be a tank. But as long as one squishes under my shoe, it's not a tank. So what is he? So I wanted to stick with the more than 4 wheel thing. Just to get some semblance of like the tone in there. But I feel like it should be something a little different, than your just standard car. So we've come up with this. So if this looks familiar, it is the same kind of car that Dragstrip transforms into. This was something of an experimental car. It comes by here once in a while, but more or less it's just kind of like a historic kind of race car now. You never really see them in competition. But what I like about it is that it's so low to the ground. Like when I think of a spider crawling around, I'm thinking like it stays as low as it can. And that strikes, IndyCar to me. That strikes F1 car to me. And I would say the same of Black Arachnia. And this also means that they are a little bit smaller than your standard vehicles, so it kind of works in with the smaller stature of the characters. And man, it just started raining really hard here. You hear that? You hear that? That wasn't here 10 minutes ago, was it? That's Florida. Welcome to Florida. Can't predict these. Cannot predict these. Okay, so you'll excuse the background audio as we move on, and I will show you the next one, Dinobot. This one gave me a lot of trouble. So because his body style is similar to Megatron, I kind of wanted to stick in the military vehicle aspect, but he's no tank. He's way too small for that, and he's more in your face. He's not the kind of like big blaster type. So I wanted to be something else. I wanted to be something similar, but I also wanted it to be a little less aggressive here. So what I found was a desert patrol vehicle. So it's got the armor, it's got the bulk, and it is something of like a defense vehicle. But it definitely does not have like the like aggression of a T-Rex, right? And it's a little bit more nimble. It's faster as well. It's faster than your standard tank. So I feel like it gets a nice, happy little blend in there. Like I said, it's the bipeds, the bipedal beast modes are the ones that gave me the most trouble because I don't want to default to standard stuff, but I need to account for it somehow. It needs to feel right for the character. I don't know if this quite feels like Dinobot, but at the moment, it's about as close as I can come. I'm happy enough with it for the list, but I feel like I could do better if I knew more about my military and defense vehicle options. So, speaking of, we're moving on to Scorponok here, which is not someone that I intended to include because he's a lot to account for on Scorponok. But I found a vehicle that I think that I almost used for Megatron, trying to avoid the tank altogether. But I think it works better for Scorponok. So we have this armed truck. This is an Israeli vehicle. It is basically just an armored semi-truck with a cannon in the back. And I'm sorry, it just screams scorpion tail. Like, there's just no avoiding that. And we're also keeping with the idea of arachnids having more than 4 wheels. So I'm giving myself extra credit here. Yes, just simple enough. It resembles a scorpion. It's got a scorpion tail for a cannon. So I'm counting it. This would be my Scorponok. Let's go into challenge mode now. How would I do Quickstrike? Now, I tried to originally tackle Silverbolt, and I thought about making it like one of those, like, because they do make cars that do have the capability of flight. It's not great flight. It's just like theoretically, like it works in like a short burst. The ones that really work, you have to basically like attach and detach the wings every time you like land. So it's not there's no real great option for land and air. I almost made him a seaplane. So he at least had 2 different terrains that he could be like in command of. But at the end, that didn't really feel right to like make him aquatic in some way. So I put Silverbolt aside. But Quickstrike, I actually wanted to try and figure something out. Now, he's got a similar body shape to Scorponok, but he does things a little bit differently. And of course, we got to account for the difference in their tails. So I didn't, because he's small, I couldn't really make him any kind of vehicle. I couldn't make him any kind of like attack vehicle. So I had to think different direction for a Quickstrike. What I came up with was this. This is a walking excavator, and this is a real vehicle. They use it in areas that are too hilly or too rocky to get an actual excavator into. So this has the capability of like shifting its legs around and extending them in order to essentially walk up all these like precarious ridges that a standard excavator otherwise wouldn't be capable of scaling or getting around. So it's a funky little vehicle, but a Fusor is a funky little animal. And Quickstrike is on the smaller side. As you can see, it's a one-seater vehicle. This is pretty small as far as construction vehicles go. It's an oddball, but it's appropriate. I think it works in a super weird way. And I think I've got one more to go, and that would be Inferno. So this is, again, a tricky nut to crack. So we're dealing with an insect this time. He's not a fly. Well, he's a female insect, so he's, his beast mode is, so he's not a flyer. Not in beast mode, anyway. But I wanted to figure out something. So what are ants good at? Ants are good at, like, heavy labor and digging. So ants are diggers. So that immediately put me in the right direction, but I wanted to pick just the right style. So I didn't want to be an excavator. I didn't want to be a, like, hole driller. No. My brain thought trench digger. And thank you, Google. You make me happy. Now that's a trench digger. So imagine this. So it's heavy duty. So we've already got that, like, the strength going on of an ant going into this vehicle. But also, yes, it looks absolutely terrifying. Tell me, dear viewer, if Inferno could choose a vehicle mode, tell me he would not choose a giant chainsaw on tank treads. It just feels like something that psychopath would do. I love this. Like, I think of all the ones I picked, like, Waspenator's obvious. Waspenator's perfect, but he's obvious. This, I think, is a left field choice. It is also just like, bang. Like, this nails it. I love this idea. I love this as, like, an Earth mode, vehicle mode for Inferno. All right, so that's the list. That's all the ones I got. If people enjoyed it, maybe we'll redo the other cast, or we'll see if the transmetal aspect changes up what I feel some of these characters would be. Who knows? It is something that I could revisit. But for now, we're going to leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you disagree, because my vehicle knowledge is limited, and I could actually do with some, like, this is what it should have been, this would have been a good pick, what about this for Silverbolt? That's going to be interesting this time, so feel free to let me know, and I will see you next time. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.